and see if it would have changed the aspect of that game or that battle. And that's kind of how I always look at the force fields myself, and going through exactly if you put your cursor and make the force field, you need to like connect it. Make sure it's not overlapping or the next cursor is not touching the pre-existing force field that's already there. Now, a lot of the problem, of course, is everybody knows how to force field. Everybody knows how to make sure that the cursor doesn't touch the force field. It's all about doing it quickly enough that you don't take too long to do it and have roaches or lings or marines, whatever the case is, already get to you. And that's obviously the big problem. It's definitely a little bit of practice to get it down in an instant if something was coming and then you were trying to force field. Even myself, if I were to do this and I try to do it as quick as I can, I'll stack up a couple of these force fields to just try to minimize the time it takes, but get as much surface area reduced as possible. And you'll see like there's going to be a little hole if I were to try to do it quickly. Now, if I were to give you some advice on to how to do this correctly, other than watching the replays, if you were to give some advice, Jshore, what would it be? I'll give my part.
Practice. Somehow.
Well,
versus AI, just...
AI.
I don't know. I mean, just go, like, do what you're doing now and just practice laying down force fields as quickly and accurately as possible. When there's no pressure situation, just, you can practice and
just have fun
get
with
it down and have a second chance 20 seconds later as opposed to having to play a game for 10 minutes to get to a second chance. Try it again.
Fair enough. That's good. That's definitely good advice. I would say that first thing you want to do is always have I always have my finger on the F button, my pointer finger. That's what I use to force field. I always have my sentries in either a separate hotkey or hotkey with my stalkers, depending on the situation. If I had blink stalkers, then I might want to consider separate hotkeys, for example. And I always check one thing. I check is numbers. How many numbers do I have? How much energy do I have? With those two in mind, before the battle starts, that can tell me a lot. It tells me how many I'm allowed to use. So I look at my energy. I say, oh look, I have X amount of sentries with X amount of energy. That means that for the first application of the force fields, I can only use 5. Then I look at the battlefield. Wherever the battle starts, I tell myself again, I can only use 5. You set yourself a limit. Why do you set yourself a limit? Because if you had no limit in your head, you would make a force field donut. You would be like, yay, and you would use all your energy, and it would look disgusting. If you set yourself a hard limit, go into the battle, say, okay, I only have this much energy, this many sentries. If I want to be successful in this battle, I can only use a total of 5. You'll be very careful with how you place those 5 force fields. You'll say, okay, I need to cut his army in half. I can only have 5 force fields. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you'll try to do your best to minimize the amount of energy you use. So always set a limit. Keep your finger on the hotkey for the force field, whatever one you want to use. Set a limit for your force fields. Evaluate what you have, how much energy, how many sentries. Evaluate the battle, whatever the terrain is, and set yourself that limit. In addition to that, remain calm. I know a lot of players that will go crazy and they'll see an army and they'll just go, again, they'll do that force field mess. It's okay to take a second if you have to and then do the force fields. It's alright. I always tell people it's better to take a second and get good force fields than get terrible force fields in a millisecond. It's better to do this in like 2 seconds than, well, those are actually pretty decent. I'm too used to that. Let's pretend those weren't good. Let's try and fail. These are bad force fields. You don't want to against an army that's coming this way. It's better to take the time and not panic in a battle if you have to force field. Alright, I think that's going to do it. That's all I have on force fields. Any last bit of advice, Jshore? Anything I'd like to say?
No.
Of course, we did the PvZ tutorial as an example, where I think force fields are really important. But you can, I mean, it's also going to be very important PvP on the ramps. You want to make sure you take the time, get it on a ramp pretty easy. I felt that was kind of self-explanatory, and that we didn't need to do that. And Protoss vs. Terran, also important to prevent kiting. Same kind of concept, except you put it behind the Terran army, not through the middle of it sometimes. And I think that's going to wrap this up. I think we're good to go.
Alright.
Awesome. And I think, what are we doing next week for our topic?
I have no idea.
Let me see what I have. Our topic is going to be... We already did crisis control, we did pylons. We didn't do camera control, right?
Hmm? I don't remember doing camera
We didn't
control.
do hotkeys. No, we didn't do that yet. Offense versus defense in terms of a Protoss player. And then I had like a PvP theory craft section with Robo First Council DTs, Phoenix setup. So we could probably do, well, let's do some camera control next. It'll probably be simple. I have different camera options for really quick overview. I have different camera control functions for all the races myself. It's actually interesting. For example, Zerg, it's very important to have hotkeys set on your queen and consistently looking at your hatcheries. Protoss, I don't care about looking at my Nexus. I don't care about how much energy is on my Nexus. I don't need to look at it every 45 seconds, so it's not going to be as important for me to do that. What I will have are buildings. Like, Zerg doesn't have that, because they have one hatchery. They don't need Robo, Stargate, whatever, Gateway. And Terran, you don't need any camera controls, you just stim. So I'll sum that up. So Protoss, we're going to look into the Protoss section of what you should be looking at when you're playing as a Protoss player with your camera, what you should set your hotkeys to, and what's your rotation for that. And we'll talk about that next week. Right, Jshore?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, great. Anything else?
No, just, you know, you kill me